There are moments that split your life in two. Before and after. The person you were and the person you become. Everything you believed, suddenly revealed as a carefully constructed lie. For me, that moment happened on a Tuesday afternoon in a pawn shop on Maple Street. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be at the dentist, getting a routine cleaning. But the appointment had been canceled. The hygienist was sick, and I found myself with 2 unexpected hours of freedom. A rare gift for a woman who spent her days managing a household, raising 2 children, and supporting a husband whose career always seemed to come first. So I wandered. I browsed the antique store on Fifth Avenue. I stopped for coffee at the little cafe where we used to go before the kids were born. And then, on a whim, I ducked into the pawn shop I had passed 100 times but never entered. I told myself I was just curious, just killing time, just exploring a part of my neighborhood I had never really seen. But maybe some part of me knew. Maybe some part of me had been waiting for this moment, even though I couldn't have articulated what I was waiting for. The pawn shop was exactly what you'd expect. Dusty glass cases filled with jewelry and watches, shelves of electronics and musical instruments, the faint smell of cigarette smoke clinging to everything. A bored-looking man sat behind the counter, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing up when I entered. I drifted through the aisles without purpose, looking at things I had no intention of buying. An old typewriter, a collection of vintage cameras, a tray of mismatched earrings that sparkled under the fluorescent lights. And then I saw it. In the jewelry case, nestled between a gaudy cocktail ring and a tarnished silver bracelet, was a wedding band. White gold. Simple, elegant, with a small cluster of diamonds set into the top. My wedding ring. Not a ring like mine, not a similar ring. Mine. I recognized the tiny scratch on the inside of the band, the one I had made accidentally when I was gardening years ago. I recognized the slight discoloration near the setting where the gold had worn thin. I recognized every millimeter of that ring because I had worn it for 14 years. Until 8 months ago, when it went missing. Let me go back. My name is Renee Patterson. I'm 41 years old, a former marketing executive who left her career 12 years ago to raise our children and support my husband's ambitions. I live in a 4-bedroom colonial in a nice suburb, drive a sensible SUV, and volunteer at my kids' school 3 days a week. From the outside, my life looked perfect. From the outside, I was living the dream. My husband, Victor, was a successful financial advisor with a corner office and a client list that read like a who's who of our community. He was handsome, charming, the kind of man who remembered everyone's name and made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. We met at a charity gala when I was 25. He was 32, already established, already confident in a way that made my knees weak. He pursued me with an intensity that was flattering and overwhelming. Within a year, we were engaged. Within 2, we were married. The early years were good. Not perfect, no marriage is perfect, but good. Victor worked long hours, but he came home to me every night. We had 2 beautiful children, our son Marcus, now 13, and our daughter Lily, now 10. We built a life together, brick by brick, year by year. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started. Maybe it was after Victor's promotion 4 years ago, when his hours got longer and his attention got shorter. Maybe it was after Lily started school and I suddenly had more time to notice the silences that had crept into our marriage. Maybe it was always there, and I was just too busy to see it. Victor became distant, distracted. He checked his phone constantly, angled away from me so I couldn't see the screen. He took calls in another room, his voice low and murmuring. He worked late more often, came home smelling faintly of perfume he claimed was from a client's office. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that successful men are busy men, that his distraction was a sign of professional dedication, not personal betrayal. I told myself all the things women tell themselves when they don't want to see what's right in front of them. And then my wedding ring went missing. It happened 8 months ago. I had taken it off to apply lotion before bed, a habit I'd developed years ago to keep the ring from getting cloudy. I set it on my nightstand, the same place I always put it, and went to sleep. In the morning, it was gone. I searched everywhere, under the bed, behind the nightstand, in the bathroom in case I had sleepwalked and moved it. I tore apart our bedroom, our bathroom, our closet. Nothing. "It has to be here somewhere," Victor said, watching me search with an expression I couldn't read. "Rings don't just disappear." "I know I put it on the nightstand. I always put it on the nightstand." "Maybe you forgot this time. Maybe it fell somewhere unusual." I searched for 3 days. I moved furniture. I checked the vacuum bag. I even had Marcus and Lily look in their rooms in case one of them had picked it up and forgotten. Nothing. Eventually, Victor suggested that I must have lost it somewhere outside the house, that I had taken it off at the gym or the grocery store and simply forgotten. He was sympathetic, understanding, even offered to buy me a replacement. "It won't be the same," I said, tears streaming down my face. "That ring was irreplaceable. It was the ring you proposed with, the ring I've worn for 14 years. "I know, sweetheart, but we can get something even more beautiful, something that represents how much our love has grown." His words were comforting. His expression was concerned. And I, desperate to believe in the life I had built, accepted his explanation and his comfort. I let him buy me a new ring, a larger diamond, a more modern setting. I wore it and tried to feel the same connection I had felt to the original. I told myself that what mattered was the marriage, not the symbol. But something nagged at me. Something didn't feel right. And now, 8 months later, I was staring at my original wedding ring in a pawn shop display case, and the world was tilting on its axis. "Can I help you with something?" The voice startled me. The man behind the counter had finally looked up from his phone, noticing that I had been standing frozen in front of the jewelry case for several minutes. "That ring," I said, pointing with a trembling finger. "The white gold band with the diamond cluster. Where did you get it?" He shrugged. "Someone brought it in. That's how pawn shops work." Who brought it in?" "I can't tell you that. Customer confidentiality." "Please," my voice cracked. "That ring is mine. It was stolen from me." The man's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "You're saying it's stolen property." "I'm saying it's my wedding ring. It went missing from my house 8 months ago. I have photos. I have the original receipt from the jeweler." He studied me for a long moment. "Look, lady, I don't want any trouble. We follow all the legal procedures. We hold items for 30 days before putting them out. We report our inventory to the police. If this ring was reported stolen, it would have been flagged." "I didn't report it stolen. I thought I had lost it." "Then how do you know it's yours?" "Because I wore it for 14 years. Because I know every scratch and imperfection. Because it has my initials engraved inside the band." The man hesitated. Then, with a sigh, he unlocked the case and pulled out the ring. "What are the initials?" "RMP Renee Marie Patterson. My maiden name was Renee Marie Miller. The P was added after I got married." He turned the ring over, squinting at the inside of the band. His expression changed. "RMP, he confirmed. "It's right here." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Can you tell me when it was brought in? What date?" He moved to a computer behind the counter, typing for a moment. "December 15th, about 8 months ago." December 15th, 3 days after it went missing from my nightstand. "And you're sure you can't tell me who brought it in?" "I can't give you a name, but I can tell you it was a man, well-dressed, wedding ring on his finger." He paused, looking at me with something like sympathy. "Seemed like a regular kind of guy, nothing suspicious about him." A man, well-dressed, wedding ring on his finger. My husband had been wearing his wedding ring the entire time mine was missing. He had comforted me, helped me search, offered to buy me a replacement. And 3 days after it disappeared, he had pawned it for cash. The question was, why? I bought the ring back. $300, a fraction of what it was worth, but I didn't care. I needed it in my hands, needed to confirm that this wasn't some bizarre coincidence, some trick of my desperate imagination. It wasn't. The ring was mine. Every scratch, every imperfection, every memory embedded in that simple band of gold. I sat in my car in the pawn shop parking lot, staring at the ring in my palm, trying to make sense of what I had discovered. Victor had stolen my wedding ring and pawned it. The man I had been married to for 14 years, the father of my children, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world. Why would he do that? We weren't struggling financially. His career was thriving. We had savings, investments, a comfortable life. $300 or whatever he had received for the ring was nothing to us. Unless it wasn't about the money. Unless it was about something else entirely. My mind raced through possibilities, each one more terrible than the last. An affair, a gambling addiction, a secret debt, a double life I knew nothing about. I thought about the late nights at the office, the phone calls taken in private, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume, the distance that had grown between us, so gradual I had almost convinced myself it was normal. I thought about the new ring on my finger, the replacement Victor had so graciously provided. Had he bought it with the money from pawning the original? Had I been wearing a ring purchased with the profits of his betrayal? The thought made me want to tear it off my finger and throw it out the window. But I didn't, not yet. Because I needed to understand what was happening before I confronted him. I needed evidence. I needed to know the full scope of what he had done. And I needed to be smart about how I discovered it. I drove home in a fog. The ring sat in my purse like a grenade, waiting to explode the life I had so carefully constructed. I pulled into the driveway of our beautiful colonial, looked at the manicured lawn and the cheerful flower beds and the welcome mat that said the Pattersons, and I felt like I was seeing someone else's house. Maybe I was. Maybe the life I thought I was living had never really existed. Victor's car wasn't in the driveway. He was at work, like always, doing whatever it was he did during those long hours at the office, or whatever he claimed to be doing. I walked inside and stood in the foyer, looking around with new eyes. The family photos on the wall, the expensive furniture we had chosen together, the children's artwork on the refrigerator, the shoes lined up by the door, the 1,000 small details that make up a home. All of it suddenly felt fragile, temporary, built on a foundation I could no longer trust. I went upstairs to our bedroom, the room where my ring had disappeared 8 months ago. I stood by the nightstand, remembering how desperately I had searched, how certain I had been that it was there somewhere, just out of sight. Victor had watched me search. He had helped me search. He had held me while I cried over its loss. And the whole time, he knew exactly where it was, because he had taken it. The cruelty of that twisted something inside me, not just the theft, though that was bad enough, but the performance, the sympathy, the comfort offered by the very person who had caused my pain. What kind of person does that? What kind of person had I married? I started searching. Not for the ring this time, I had that back. I searched for evidence, for proof of whatever Victor was hiding, for the truth I had been too blind or too trusting to see. I started with his home office. Victor kept it locked when he wasn't home, something he had started doing about 3 years ago. Client confidentiality, he had explained. I can't risk the kids accidentally seeing sensitive financial documents. It had seemed reasonable at the time. Now it seemed suspicious. I knew where he kept the key, in a small box in his sock drawer, hidden beneath layers of black dress socks. I had discovered it accidentally years ago and never mentioned it, respecting his privacy, trusting that his secrets were professional rather than personal. The key was still there. I held it in my trembling hand, knowing that once I opened that door, there was no going back. I opened it anyway. The office was neat, organized, exactly what you'd expect from a successful financial advisor. A large desk with a leather chair, filing cabinets along one wall, bookshelves filled with financial texts and family photos, a computer that would require a password I didn't know. I started with the filing cabinets. Most of what I found was legitimate: client files, tax documents, investment reports. Nothing that suggested wrongdoing. I was about to give up when I noticed that one of the drawers seemed shallower than it should be. I pulled out the files and felt along the bottom. There was a seam barely visible but definitely there. I pressed on it, and a panel popped up, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a manila envelope, thick with documents. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The first thing I saw was a photograph. Victor with another woman. A beautiful woman, younger than me by at least 10 years, with dark hair and a bright smile. They were at a restaurant, leaning close together, his hand on her cheek in a gesture of unmistakable intimacy. I felt my stomach turn, but I forced myself to keep looking. There were more photos. Victor and the woman on a beach. Victor and the woman at what looked like a hotel room. Victor and the woman with a baby. A baby. I stared at the image, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Victor was holding an infant, a tiny thing, maybe a few months old, and he was looking at it with an expression I recognized. Love, pride. The same expression he had worn when he held Marcus for the first time, when he held Lily. The woman stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, both of them smiling at the camera like a happy family. Because they were a family, Victor had another family. I sat down heavily in his leather chair, the photos scattering across the desk. My vision blurred with tears that I refused to let fall. Not yet, not until I understood everything. I kept going through the envelope. There were financial documents, bank statements for accounts I had never seen, credit cards in names I didn't recognize. There were receipts for expensive gifts, jewelry, clothing, furniture. There were rent payments for an apartment across town. There were medical bills from an OB/GYN, from a pediatrician, from a hospital where someone had given birth 14 months ago. 14 months. The baby in the photo was over a year old. Victor had been living a double life for at least 2 years, probably longer, given the timeline of the pregnancy. He had been supporting another woman, fathering another child, building another family while coming home to me every night and pretending everything was normal. The ring made sense now. Not as a source of funds, he clearly had plenty of money flowing to his other life, but as a symbol. He had taken my wedding ring and pawned it because our marriage meant nothing to him, because I meant nothing to him. Or maybe he had given the money to her, a gift funded by the destruction of our vows. I sat in his office for a long time, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, trying to figure out what to do next. The smart thing would have been to call a lawyer. To document everything, to protect myself and my children, to prepare for the battle that was inevitably coming. That's what rational people do when they discover their husband has been leading a double life. But I wasn't feeling rational. I was feeling something older, darker, more primal. I was feeling rage. 14 years of my life. 14 years of supporting his career, raising his children, maintaining his home. 14 years of sacrificing my own ambitions so he could pursue his. 14 years of trusting him completely, never questioning, never doubting. And all that time, I had been a placeholder, a prop in the performance of his respectable life, the wife who waited at home while he built something real with someone else. I looked at the photos again. The woman was beautiful, yes, but there was something else about her. A confidence, a vitality. She looked like someone living fully, not someone waiting for her husband to come home and make her feel complete. Is that how Victor saw me? As someone diminished? Someone so focused on him that I had forgotten to be my own person? Maybe he was right. Maybe I had lost myself somewhere along the way, but that didn't justify what he had done. That didn't excuse the lies, the theft, the elaborate deception. I carefully returned everything to the hidden compartment, arranging it exactly as I had found it. Then I locked the office door and put the key back in his sock drawer. Victor would come home tonight expecting to find his obedient wife, his comfortable life, his carefully maintained facade. And he would find exactly that. For now, the next few weeks were an exercise in performance. I smiled at Victor across the breakfast table. I asked about his day, listened to his lies, pretended to believe every word. I kissed him goodbye in the morning and welcomed him home in the evening, playing the role of devoted wife while my heart turned to ice. Meanwhile, I gathered evidence. I found a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in high-asset divorces and came highly recommended by a friend whose own marriage had imploded spectacularly. I met with her in secret, bringing copies of the documents I had found in Victor's office. "This is significant," Patricia said, flipping through the pages. "Hidden assets, undisclosed accounts, what appears to be a separate household. You have strong grounds for divorce." "I want more than divorce. I want him to suffer." Patricia looked at me with an expression that was part sympathy, part warning. "I understand the impulse, but revenge rarely leads where we think it will. Let's focus on protecting you and your children financially. Let's make sure you come out of this with everything you deserve." And what do I deserve? Half of everything, at minimum, with this evidence of hidden assets, possibly more, and full custody of your children, given his demonstrated pattern of deception and divided attention. Full custody. I hadn't even thought about what this would mean for Marcus and Lily. They adored their father. He was present for their games, their recitals, their bedtime stories. He was a good dad, or at least, he played one convincingly. But he was also a man who had fathered another child, who was raising that child in parallel, visiting a second home, maintaining a second life. How could I trust him with my children's well-being when he had proven himself capable of such elaborate deceit? "I need to know who she is," I said. "The other woman, I need to understand what I'm dealing with." "We can hire a private investigator, build a complete picture of his other life." "Do it. I want to know everything." The investigator's name was Frank Morty. He was a former police detective, now in his 50s, with the world-weary expression of someone who had seen too much of human nature's darker side. He took my case without judgment, without moralizing, without any of the pitying looks I had dreaded. "I'll have a full report within 2 weeks," he promised. "Everything there is to know about this woman, your husband's relationship with her, and the extent of his deception." 2 weeks. 2 more weeks of pretending. 2 more weeks of smiling at a man who had destroyed our marriage without ever giving me the chance to fight for it. I could do that. I had been doing it for months without even knowing. During those 2 weeks, I watched Victor more carefully than I ever had before. I noticed the moments when his attention drifted, the slight smile that crossed his face when his phone buzzed, the way he angled his body away from me when taking calls, the lies that slipped so easily from his lips: working late, client dinner, conference call, each one a betrayal I now recognized for what it was. I noticed how he looked at me too, or rather, how he didn't look at me. His eyes slid past me as if I were furniture, part of the background of his life rather than its center. When had that started? When had I become invisible to the man who had once pursued me with such passion? Or had I always been invisible? Had the passion itself been a performance, designed to secure the respectable wife who would anchor his public image, while he pursued his real desires elsewhere? I would never know. That was the cruelest part. I would never know what had been real and what had been lies, because the man I thought I knew didn't exist. He was a character Victor played, a mask he wore, and the face beneath was someone I was only beginning to glimpse. Frank Morty delivered his report on a gray Thursday afternoon. We met at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, far from anyone who might recognize me. He slid a thick envelope across the table, his expression carefully neutral. "It's comprehensive," he said. "You may want to read it alone." "Give me the highlights." He nodded, pulling out his notes. "Her name is Vanessa Torres. She's 32 years old, works as a marketing consultant. She met your husband approximately 4 years ago at a professional conference." 4 years. 4 years of lies. Our children had been 9 and 6 when this started. They've been in a committed relationship since then. Your husband pays the rent on her apartment and provides substantial monthly support. They have a son together, Dylan, born 14 months ago. A son. Victor had a son I knew nothing about. Does she know about me? I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. That's where it gets complicated. Frank paused, choosing his words carefully. From what I can determine, Ms. Torres believes your husband is divorced. He told her his marriage ended years ago, that he shares custody of his children with his ex-wife, and that their relationship has been over for a long time. I stared at him. She doesn't know he's still married. It doesn't appear so. She refers to him as her partner, her son's father, but there's no indication she knows about your current marriage. She may be as much a victim of his deception as you are. This changed everything. I had been preparing to hate this woman, the home wrecker, the other woman, the enemy who had stolen my husband. But if she didn't know? She's not innocent, Frank continued, reading my expression. She made choices. She got involved with a man who claimed to be divorced without verifying his story. But the level of deception your husband has maintained is extraordinary. He's essentially been living two complete lives for years. Two complete lives, two families, two sets of lies. There's something else, Frank said, his tone shifting. Something I found in my financial investigation. What? Your husband has been moving money, significant amounts. Over the past 6 months, approximately $400,000 has been transferred from accounts accessible to you, joint accounts, marital assets, into accounts controlled solely by him. Accounts connected to his life with Ms. Torres. $400,000. He was draining our marital assets, preparing to leave me with nothing. If this pattern continues, Frank said, there may not be much left to divide in a divorce. He's systematically positioning himself to abandon your marriage with the majority of your shared wealth. I sat in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what I was hearing. Victor wasn't just cheating on me. He wasn't just leading a double life. He was planning to destroy me financially, to leave me and our children with nothing while he walked away to his new family. He had already stolen my wedding ring. Now he was stealing everything else. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Victor, listening to him breathe, watching the shadows on the ceiling, and I made plans. He thought he was the clever one. He thought he was orchestrating everything, controlling the narrative, positioning himself for a clean escape. He thought I was oblivious, the trusting wife who would never suspect, never investigate, never fight back. He was wrong. I had documentation of hidden assets. I had evidence of his second family. I had proof that he was systematically draining our marital wealth. And I had something he didn't know about, something that would change everything. The prenuptial agreement. We had signed it 14 years ago, at Victor's insistence. He had framed it as a practical matter, nothing personal. He was bringing significant assets into the marriage, savings, investments, the beginnings of his financial practice. He wanted to protect them in case things didn't work out. I had been hurt, initially. The implication that he was already planning for our failure felt like a lack of faith in our love. But he had reassured me, explained that it was just standard procedure for someone in his financial position, promised that it would never matter because we would be together forever. So I had signed, without reading it carefully, without consulting my own lawyer, trusting him completely the way I trusted him with everything. It was only now, 14 years later, that I actually read the full document. Patricia Chen's eyes widened as she reviewed the prenup in her office. Did Victor have his own attorney draft this? Yes. I just signed where he told me to sign. And you never had independent legal counsel review it? No, he said it wasn't necessary. He said it was straightforward. Patricia set down the document, a strange expression on her face, something between disbelief and barely suppressed glee. Mrs. Patterson, this prenuptial agreement is extraordinary. What do you mean? I mean it's heavily weighted in your favor, extremely heavily. The infidelity clause alone is remarkable. I leaned forward. Infidelity clause. Page 7, paragraph 3. Patricia slid the document across her desk, pointing to the relevant section. In the event that either party engages in extramarital relations during the marriage, resulting in the dissolution of said marriage, the offending party forfeits all claims to marital assets accumulated during the marriage, and the aggrieved party shall be entitled to sole ownership of all shared properties, accounts, and investments. I read the words twice, making sure I understood. He forfeits everything. Everything accumulated during the marriage. His separate assets from before are protected, but given that he spent 14 years building his practice, acquiring properties, and growing investments, the vast majority of your shared wealth was accumulated during the marriage. And it all goes to me. If we can prove infidelity, yes, and given what Mr. Morty has uncovered, Patricia smiled, I'd say we have more than enough proof. I sat back in my chair, feeling something shift in my chest. Not quite hope, I was too damaged for hope, but something adjacent to it. Power, maybe, the beginning of control. There's more, Patricia continued. Page 12, paragraph 8, the clause regarding hidden assets. I turned to the page. In the event that either party is found to have concealed assets, maintained secret accounts, or otherwise hidden marital wealth from the other party, said hidden assets shall be forfeit to the aggrieved party in their entirety, in addition to any other remedies available under this agreement. So the money he's been moving. If we can document the transfers, and we can, it all comes back to you, every penny he's tried to hide. I thought about the $400,000 Frank had uncovered, the apartment he was paying for, the life he was building with Vanessa Torres and their son. All of it funded with money that legally belonged to me. Why would he sign something like this? I asked. Why would anyone create a prenup that protects the other party so completely? Patricia shrugged. Arrogance, most likely. He never expected to get caught. Or perhaps he thought the document would protect him. He probably focused on the sections that preserved his premarital assets and didn't consider that the infidelity clause could work against him. He was so confident I would never cheat. And so confident that if he did, you would never find out. The irony was almost beautiful. Victor's careful planning, his elaborate deception, his systematic theft, all of it was about to backfire spectacularly. The very document he had designed to protect himself was going to destroy him. What do we do now? I asked. Now we build an airtight case. We document everything, the affair, the hidden assets, the transfers. We prepare for war. Patricia's expression was fierce, almost predatory. And then, when we're ready, we file for divorce, and we take him for everything he has. The preparation took 3 months. 3 months of continued performance, of smiling at Victor while my lawyers gathered ammunition. 3 months of watching him lie to my face, kiss me goodbye, play with our children as if nothing was wrong. I told myself I was being strategic. I told myself I needed to wait until everything was in place, until there was no chance of him wriggling out of the consequences. I told myself patience was a virtue. But the truth was more complicated. Some part of me was still hopping against all evidence, against all logic, that there was an explanation, that what I had discovered wasn't as bad as it seemed, that the man I had loved for 14 years was still in there somewhere, capable of remorse, capable of change. That part of me died the night I followed him to Vanessa's apartment. It was a Saturday. Victor had claimed a client emergency, a crisis that required his immediate attention. He had kissed me apologetically, promised to make it up to me, and driven away. I waited 15 minutes, then I got in my car and followed. The apartment was in a nice building across town, not luxurious, but comfortable. Middle-class respectability. The kind of place where a divorced father might set up his second life without attracting attention. I parked across the street and watched. Victor emerged from his car carrying flowers. Flowers he never bought for me anymore. He practically bounced up the steps to the building, his face transformed by an anticipation I hadn't seen directed at me in years. A few minutes later, a light came on in a third-floor window. I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Then the curtains parted and I saw them. Victor, Vanessa, and a toddler, their son Dylan, being lifted up to look out the window at the night sky. They looked happy, complete, a perfect little family, untainted by the lies that made their existence possible. I sat in my car and watched them for an hour. I watched Victor play with his son, lifting him up, making him laugh. I watched Vanessa lean against him, comfortable and secure, clearly in love with the man she believed she knew. I watched the domestic scene unfold with a normalcy that made my chest ache. This was real to them. Whatever Victor was to me, liar, thief, betrayer, to them, he was a loving partner and father. He had built something genuine with this woman, even if it was founded on deception. And suddenly, my rage crystallized into something colder and more focused. He didn't get to have this. He didn't get to destroy my life and walk away to a happy ending. He didn't get to steal my years, my trust, my wedding ring, and then live happily ever after with his new family. I had been prepared to take everything he had. Now I was prepared to take everything he loved. I made a decision that night. Vanessa Torres didn't know she was the other woman. She believed Victor was divorced, available, hers. She had built her life around a man who didn't exist. She deserved to know the truth. Not because I wanted to hurt her, though I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in the thought, but because she was raising a child with my husband. Because her choices affected my children's future. Because she couldn't make informed decisions about her life while living inside Victor's lies. And because, if I'm being completely honest, I wanted an ally. If Vanessa knew the truth, she would be hurt, angry, betrayed. She would feel everything I was feeling, multiplied by the realization that her entire relationship was built on fraud. An angry Vanessa could help me destroy Victor. A Vanessa armed with truth could corroborate my claims, provide additional evidence, testify to his pattern of deception. It was strategic, but it was also right. She deserved to know who she was really with. I approached her on a Tuesday morning. I knew from Frank's surveillance that she took Dylan to a park near her apartment every morning at 10. She sat on a bench while he played in the sandbox, scrolling through her phone, occasionally looking up to wave at him. I sat down beside her. "Beautiful day," I said. She glanced up, smiled politely. "It really is. Finally feels like spring." "Is that your son? He's adorable." "Thank you." Her face softened with maternal pride. "He's 18 months, a handful but the best kind." I remember that age. My daughter was the same way, into everything, climbing everything, absolutely fearless. We talked for a few minutes about children, about the challenges and joys of parenting. She was warm, friendly, clearly happy to have adult conversation during her morning routine. I could see why Victor was attracted to her. She had an energy, a vitality that I had lost somewhere along the way. Or that had been worn away by years of marriage to a man who was never fully present. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "I haven't introduced myself. I'm Renee." "Vanessa," she extended her hand. "Nice to meet you." "Actually," I said, keeping my voice gentle, "we've met before, in a way." Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry." "My last name is Patterson, Renee Patterson." I paused, watching her face. "I'm Victor's wife." The silence stretched between us. I watched Vanessa's expression cycle through confusion, disbelief, fear, and finally a terrible understanding. Her face went pale. Her hands began to shake. That's not possible," she whispered. "Victor's divorced." "He told me, years ago." "He lied." No, that can't be right. We have a son together. We're building a life together. He would never." "I've been married to Victor for 14 years. We have 2 children, Marcus, who's 13, and Lily, who's 10. I have photographs, documents, a marriage certificate. I am very much still his wife." Vanessa shook her head, but I could see the doubt creeping in. The small inconsistencies she had probably noticed and dismissed. The questions she had avoided asking because she didn't want to know the answers. "I have proof," I said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you, Vanessa. I know how this must feel. I know because I'm living it too." "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice was barely audible. "Why now?" "Because I found my wedding ring in a pawn shop 8 months ago. The ring Victor stole from my nightstand and sold for cash. Because I discovered the apartment he's paying for, the accounts he's hidden, the money he's draining from our marriage. Because I learned about you and Dylan, and I realized you didn't know. You have no idea who you're really with. Tears were streaming down her face now. On the playground, Dylan was calling for her, but she couldn't seem to move. I thought he loved me, she whispered. I thought we were going to get married. Maybe he does love you, in his way, but his love isn't exclusive. His commitment isn't real. He's been lying to both of us, Vanessa, playing us against each other while he takes everything he wants. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder, copies of the key documents, photographs, evidence I had assembled. Take this, look through it, verify what I'm telling you, and then, if you're willing, I'd like to talk again, because I'm going to make Victor pay for what he's done, and I think you might want to help. I stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. Neither did I. The only person who deserves what's coming is him. Vanessa called me 3 days later. Her voice was raw, scraped clean of the warmth I had heard at the park. She had spent 72 hours going through the documents I had given her, verifying every claim, confronting the reality of the man she thought she knew. I believed him, she said. Every word, every lie. I built my whole life around a fantasy. I know, I did too. He has photos of his kids in our apartment, Marcus and Lily. He talks about them constantly, how much he misses them, how hard it is to only see them on weekends. Her voice cracked. He told me his ex-wife was bitter and vindictive, that she made co-parenting difficult, that she tried to turn the kids against him. I felt a flash of anger, not just at the lie, but at the portrait he had painted of me, the villain in his narrative, the obstacle to his happiness. None of that is true, I said. We live together. He sees the kids every day. He was there for breakfast this morning, helping Lily with her homework. I know that now. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. I confronted him last night when he came over. My heart stopped. What happened? I showed him the documents, asked him to explain. And he lied. Of course he lied. He said you were a crazy ex who was stalking him, that the documents were forged, that you had been harassing him for years. She laughed bitterly. He was so convincing. For a moment, I almost believed him. What changed your mind? I looked at Dylan, our son, and I realized that if Victor could lie to me this completely for this long, then nothing he said could be trusted. Not his explanations, not his love, not any of it. She paused, her breathing unsteady. He doesn't know I don't believe him. I pretended to accept his story. I told him I was sorry for doubting him, that I trusted him completely. Why? Because you were right. I want to help you destroy him, and I can do more damage from the inside than the outside. The alliance was unexpected, but it made strategic sense. Vanessa had access to Victor's other life. The apartment, the accounts, the communications I couldn't see. She could gather evidence I couldn't obtain. She could document his lies from a perspective my lawyers couldn't reach. We met in secret, always at different locations, never leaving a trail that Victor might discover. We shared information, compared notes, built a comprehensive picture of his deception. What we found was even worse than I had imagined. Victor wasn't just maintaining 2 families. He was running a sophisticated financial scheme that exploited both of us. The money he was draining from our marital accounts, the $400,000 Frank had identified, that was just the beginning. He had also been manipulating Vanessa's finances, convincing her to invest in opportunities that funneled money into accounts she couldn't access. He said it was for our future, Vanessa told me, her face pale. For Dylan's education, for the house we were going to buy together. How much? About $150,000, everything I had. He had stolen from both of us, used our trust, our love, our hope for the future to enrich himself at our expense. But the worst discovery came from his work computer. Vanessa had managed to copy files from his laptop while he was sleeping, a risky move, but she was angry enough to take the chance. The files revealed that Victor's financial practice wasn't as legitimate as it appeared. He was running a Ponzi scheme. Not a massive one, he was too careful for that. But over the years, he had defrauded dozens of clients, taking their investments and using new money to pay the returns promised to earlier investors. The scheme had generated millions in fraudulent profits, most of which he had hidden in accounts neither Vanessa nor I knew about. "This is criminal," Patricia Chen said when I showed her the evidence. "Not just divorce-worthy, prosecutable." "I know. If we report this to the authorities, Victor could go to prison." "I know." She studied my face. "Is that what you want?" I thought about Marcus and Lily, about the father they adored, the man they trusted, the parent they would lose if Victor went to prison. Was I willing to do that to them? To take their father away, even if that father was a monster? "What I want," I said slowly, "is for my children to be protected. Financially, emotionally, completely. What I want is for Victor to never be able to hurt us again. If prison accomplishes that, then yes, that's what I want." And Vanessa, Dylan. Vanessa wants the same thing. She's terrified that Victor might try to take Dylan, might use his resources to fight for custody of a child he's been raising as his own. With the evidence we have, he won't win any custody battles. He'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. Then let's make sure the evidence is airtight. Let's make sure there's no way he can wriggle out of this. Patricia nodded, her expression grim but determined. "Give me 2 more weeks. I want everything documented, verified, and ready to present to both the family court and the district attorney. When we move against Victor Patterson, I want it to be devastating. I want it to be complete. And I want it to be public," I added. "I want everyone he knows, his clients, his colleagues, his country club friends, to see exactly who he really is." The 2 weeks passed slowly. I continued playing the devoted wife, continued smiling across the breakfast table, continued lying beside him every night while rage burned in my chest. But now there was something else beneath the rage. Anticipation. Victor was about to learn that the women he had dismissed as convenient accessories were capable of something he had never imagined. He was about to discover that trust, once broken, becomes a weapon. That love, transformed into hatred, is the most dangerous force in the world. I found myself watching him with new eyes during those final days. The confident way he moved through the world, certain of his own superiority. The casual lies that slipped from his lips without effort or remorse. The way he looked at me, through me, really as if I were an object rather than a person. Had he always been like this? Had I simply refused to see it? Or had something changed in him over the years? Some fundamental corruption that had grown until it consumed everything he once might have been. I would never know, and I realized with something like relief that I no longer cared. Understanding Victor was no longer my goal, destroying him was. The night before we filed the divorce papers, I did something I had been putting off. I told my children. Not everything, they were too young for the full horror of what their father had done. But enough. Enough for them to understand that our family was changing, that their father had made choices that couldn't be undone, that none of it was their fault. Marcus took it stoically, his 13-year-old face arranged in an expression of careful neutrality. But I saw the pain in his eyes, the confusion, the betrayal. His father was his hero, and heroes weren't supposed to be villains. Lily cried. She was only 10, still young enough to believe that love could fix everything, that families were supposed to stay together forever. I held her while she sobbed, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances I wasn't sure I believed. "Will we still see Daddy?" she asked. "That's something we'll figure out, but no matter what happens, your father loves you. That part is real." I hoped it was true. I hoped that whatever Victor had done to me, to Vanessa, to his clients, there was still some genuine love for his children somewhere inside him. But I couldn't be certain. I couldn't be certain of anything about him anymore. "Why did he do bad things?" Lily whispered. I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe some people simply made choices that destroyed everything around them, without reason, without justification, without anything that could be understood or forgiven. I don't know, sweetheart, but what I do know is that we're going to be okay. You and me and Marcus. We're going to take care of each other. We're going to be okay. I said it with conviction I didn't entirely feel, but I was determined to make it true. For my children, for myself, for the life I was going to build from the ashes of the one Victor had burned down. The day of reckoning arrived on a crisp Monday morning. Victor left for work at his usual time, kissing my cheek, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. I watched him drive away and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, not even anger, just a cold, clear sense of purpose. At 9:00 a.m., Patricia Chen filed the divorce petition with the family court. The petition cited adultery, fraud, and breach of the prenuptial agreement. It demanded full custody of our children, sole ownership of all marital assets, and immediate freezing of all accounts pending investigation. At 9:30 a.m., the district attorney's office received an anonymous tip about Victor's financial practices, accompanied by extensive documentation of his Ponzi scheme. The tip had been carefully constructed to avoid implicating Vanessa or me, pointing investigators toward evidence they could discover independently. At 10:00 a.m., I sent an email to every client on Victor's mailing list. The email contained a summary of his fraudulent activities, links to supporting documentation, and contact information for both the SEC and the State Attorney General's office. Within hours, Victor's professional reputation would be in ruins. At 10:30 a.m., Vanessa Torres filed her own legal action against Victor, a paternity suit demanding child support for Dylan, combined with a fraud complaint alleging he had misappropriated her personal savings. At 11:00 a.m., Victor Patterson was arrested at his office. I wasn't there to see it, but Frank Morty was, discreetly photographing from across the street. He sent me the images an hour later. Victor in handcuffs, being led from his building. Victor's face, transformed by shock and fear and dawning realization. Victor finally understanding that his carefully constructed world had collapsed around him. The photographs were clear, detailed, damning. I saved them to my phone and looked at them several times throughout the day. The aftermath was everything I had hoped for. Victor's arrest made the local news that evening, with reporters camped outside both our house and his office building. The coverage was sensational. A respected financial advisor unmasked as a fraud, a family man revealed as a bigamist in all but law, a pillar of the community exposed as a predator. His clients panicked, flooding the authorities with complaints and demands for investigation. His colleagues distanced themselves, issuing statements of shock and dismay. His country club revoked his membership. His professional associations began expulsion proceedings. The man who had so carefully cultivated his image of respectability watched that image burn to the ground in a matter of days. Victor's attorney called Patricia within hours of the arrest, seeking to negotiate. Victor was willing to cooperate, to provide a full accounting of his activities, to agree to whatever terms we demanded in exchange for leniency. "Tell him no," I said when Patricia relayed the offer. "Tell him there will be no deals. Tell him he's going to face the full consequences of what he's done. The prosecutor may make a deal anyway. Victor has information about other financial crimes, schemes he was connected to, people he was working with. They may want his cooperation. That's the prosecutor's choice. But as far as the divorce is concerned, there's no negotiation. I want everything the prenup entitles me to. I want full custody of my children, and I want him to know that he brought this on himself." Patricia smiled grimly. "I'll convey the message." The legal proceedings stretched over the following months. Victor's criminal case moved through the system with the grinding inevitability of justice delayed. He was denied bail. The judge cited flight risk, given his hidden assets and the severity of the charges. So while his attorneys maneuvered and negotiated, Victor sat in a county jail cell, wearing orange instead of his tailored suits. I visited him once, not out of compassion, not out of residual love, but because I needed to see him in that place. I needed to look at the man who had deceived me for years and know that he was finally facing consequences. The visiting room was exactly what you'd expect: gray walls, plastic chairs, a scratched plexiglass partition separating inmates from visitors. Victor was brought in wearing handcuffs, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. He had aged years in the months since his arrest. He sat down across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Renee," he finally said. His voice was hoarse, diminished. "You didn't have to do this." "Do what, visit you?" "Destroy me." I stared at him, searching for some sign of the man I had married. Some trace of the person I had loved, trusted, built a life with. But all I saw was a stranger, someone I had never really known, despite 14 years of marriage. "I didn't destroy you, Victor. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure people knew about it." I could have explained. If you had come to me, talked to me, given me a chance. A chance to what? Lie to me some more. Convince me that what I saw wasn't real. Gaslight me into believing you were the victim. He flinched. "It wasn't like that. Vanessa, what happened with her, it was complicated. I never meant." "Don't." My voice was ice. "Don't you dare try to explain or justify or minimize. You had another family, Victor. You had a child I knew nothing about. You stole my wedding ring and pawned it for cash. You were draining our accounts, preparing to leave me with nothing." "I wasn't going to leave you with nothing." "You were running a Ponzi scheme. You defrauded your clients. You committed crimes that are going to put you in prison for years. And you did all of it while coming home to me every night, kissing our children, pretending to be a devoted husband and father." I leaned forward, my face close to the partition. "I gave you 14 years of my life. I sacrificed my career to support yours. I raised your children while you built your practice and your reputation and your secret double life. And the whole time I was nothing to you. A cover story. A prop in the performance of your respectable life." Victor's eyes filled with tears. Whether they were genuine or another manipulation, I couldn't tell. I no longer cared. "I did love you," he whispered. "In the beginning, I did love you, Renee. Maybe, or maybe you just loved the idea of me. The convenient wife who asked no questions and expected nothing. The woman who made you look good without requiring anything real in return." "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Victor, but it's true. And truth is all that matters now." I stood to leave. "Renee, please." "Goodbye, Victor. I won't be coming back." I walked out of that visiting room and never looked back. The divorce was finalized 6 months after Victor's arrest. Patricia Chen had been right about the prenuptial agreement. It was devastating. The infidelity clause, the hidden assets provision, the carefully worded paragraphs that Victor had apparently never read closely, all of it worked in my favor. I received the house, the cars, the investment accounts, the retirement funds. I received full custody of Marcus and Lily, with Victor granted only supervised visitation once he was released from prison. I received every penny he had tried to hide, tracked down through forensic accounting and court orders. The total value of the settlement was just over $3 million. $3 million minus the restitution Victor was ordered to pay to his defrauded clients. That would come from his assets first, but there was still enough left for me and the children to be comfortable, to be secure. It wasn't about the money, though. It had never been about the money. It was about justice, about consequences, about making sure that Victor understood that his actions had destroyed something precious and that he would pay for that destruction. The criminal trial concluded a few months later. Victor pled guilty to wire fraud, investment fraud, and money laundering in exchange for a reduced sentence. He was given 8 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 5. 8 years. By the time he got out, Marcus would be an adult. Lily would be in high school. The children he had claimed to love would have grown up without him, not because of my choices, but because of his. I didn't feel satisfaction when the sentence was announced. I didn't feel vindication. I felt something closer to exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness that comes after a long battle, when victory offers relief but no joy. But I also felt something else, something unexpected. Freedom. Vanessa tours, and I stayed in touch throughout the proceedings. What had begun as a strategic alliance had evolved into something more complicated, not friendship exactly, but a bond forged through shared trauma. We understood each other in ways no one else could. We had both loved the same man, been deceived by the same lies, lost the same illusions. She moved away from the city after Victor's sentencing. Too many memories, she said. Too many reminders of the life she had thought she was building. I'm starting over, she told me during our last conversation. New city, new job, new everything. Dylan deserves a fresh start, and so do I. Will you tell him about Victor when he's older? I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. Part of me wants to protect him from the truth, to let him believe his father was just a man who made mistakes, not a deliberate fraud. But I know how dangerous lies can be. I know what happens when you build a life on a foundation of deception. She paused. So yes, eventually, when he's old enough to understand, I'll tell him the truth. And Victor, will you let Dylan see him? That's complicated. Victor has rights, legal rights. He's Dylan's father regardless of what else he is. I can't pretend he doesn't exist. But you don't have to pretend he's a good man either. No, I don't. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. You know, when you first approached me in that park, I hated you. For about 30 seconds, I hated you more than I've ever hated anyone. I understand. But then I realized you were doing what I would have done, what I would have wanted someone to do for me. You told me the truth, even though it was painful, even though it destroyed everything I believed. I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you. Don't be, I'm grateful. Angry, yes. Hurt, definitely, but grateful. She laughed softly. That's not a combination of emotions I ever expected to feel. Nothing about this situation is what anyone expected. No, it isn't, she paused. Take care of yourself, Renee. Take care of your children, and maybe someday, when enough time has passed, we can be actual friends, not just survivors of the same disaster. I'd like that. Me too. She hung up, and I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the strange paths that had brought us together. Two women who should have been enemies, united by the man who had wronged them both. The first year after Victor's sentencing was the hardest. Not because I missed him, I didn't. The man I had thought I was married to had never existed, and I couldn't miss a fiction, but I missed the life I had believed in. The security, the certainty, the sense that I knew who I was and where I belonged. All of that was gone now. I had to rebuild from scratch. I started by rebuilding my career. 12 years away from marketing had left my skills outdated and my network dormant, but I still had the fundamentals. I took courses to update my knowledge. I reached out to former colleagues who were generous enough to remember me. I started consulting, then freelancing, then slowly, gradually, building a client base of my own. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't the high-powered career I had imagined when I was 25, but it was mine, built by my own efforts, dependent on no one else. I rebuilt my relationship with my children, too. Marcus was angry at his father, at me, at the world that had betrayed his expectations. He acted out in the ways teenagers do when they're hurt: sullenness, isolation, occasional explosions of rage. But he also allowed me to comfort him sometimes, late at night when his defenses were down. He cried on my shoulder and asked questions I couldn't answer. He struggled to reconcile the father he had loved with the man that father had turned out to be. Lily was more resilient in some ways. Children are adaptable, and she adapted to our new reality with a flexibility that sometimes surprised me. She missed her father, but she also accepted his absence with a practicality that seemed beyond her years. Daddy made bad choices, she told me once. Bad choices have consequences. That's what you always taught me. I did teach you that. So this is his consequence. and our consequence is learning to live without him. Simple, direct, painfully accurate. I also rebuilt myself. This was the hardest part, and the most necessary. For 14 years, I had defined myself in relation to Victor. I was his wife, the mother of his children, the support system for his career. My identity was so intertwined with his that when his lies unraveled, I lost my sense of who I was. Therapy helped. Dr. Michelle Warren became my guide through the wreckage, helping me excavate the person I had been before Victor, the person I had lost along the way. You abandoned yourself, she told me once. Gradually, over years, you set aside your ambitions, your interests, your sense of self to make room for his. That's common in relationships, but it can become dangerous when one partner takes without giving, when the sacrifice is never reciprocated. I didn't realize I was doing it. Most people don't. It happens slowly in small increments. Each individual sacrifice seems reasonable, even loving. But they accumulate over time, until you look up one day and realize you've given away everything that made you who you were. How do I get it back? One piece at a time, by rediscovering what you want, what you believe, what makes you feel alive, by building a life that centers your needs, not someone else's. It sounded simple when she said it. It wasn't. But I tried. I rediscovered hobbies I had abandoned years ago. I reconnected with friends who had drifted away during my marriage. I learned to enjoy my own company, to fill the silence with things that nourished rather than numbed. Slowly, painstakingly, I became someone I recognized again. Not the person I had been before Victor. That woman was gone, shaped by experiences I couldn't undo. But someone new, someone forged in fire, someone stronger for having survived. 3 years have passed since I found my wedding ring in that pawn shop. 3 years of rebuilding, recovering, rediscovering who I am. 3 years of watching my children heal and grow. 3 years of learning to trust myself again, even when trusting others still feels impossible. I'm 44 now. Older than I was, certainly, but also different in ways that age alone can't explain. The woman who walked into that pawn shop, the woman who still believed her husband loved her, who still trusted the life she had built, that woman is gone. In her place is someone I'm still getting to know. Someone I'm starting to like. Marcus is 16 now, a junior in high school with his father's height and his mother's stubbornness. The anger that consumed him in the years after Victor's arrest has mellowed into something more complicated, a wariness, a guardedness, a determination to be nothing like the man who betrayed his family. He works hard in school, harder than he needs to. He holds himself to standards that are sometimes punishing. He is careful with his words, his promises, his commitments. I never want to be someone who lies, he told me recently. I never want to be someone people can't trust. You won't be. How do you know? Because you're already not that person. The fact that you worry about it, that you think about it, that's the difference between you and your father. He never worried. He never questioned. He just did whatever served him in the moment. Marcus considered this. Do you think he was always like that, or did something change him? It was a question I had asked myself countless times. Had Victor always been a manipulator, a deceiver, a man incapable of genuine connection? Or had something corrupted him along the way? Success, opportunity, the gradual realization that he could get away with anything. I don't know, I admitted. I've thought about it a lot and I still don't know, but I've realized something important. What? It doesn't matter. Whether he was always broken or became broken somewhere along the way, the damage he did is the same. The pain he caused is the same. Understanding his psychology doesn't undo what he did or heal what he hurt. So you've stopped trying to understand. I've stopped trying to excuse. There's a difference. Marcus nodded slowly. I think about visiting him sometimes, in prison, asking him directly. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. That's your choice. He's your father. If you need that conversation, I won't stop you. Would it bother you if I went? Honestly, yes, it would bother me, but not enough to ask you not to go. You have to make your own peace with what happened, Marcus. even if that piece looks different from mine. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't think I'm ready yet, maybe someday, but not yet. That's okay too. Lily is 13 now, navigating the treacherous waters of middle school with a resilience that constantly amazes me. She has processed her father's betrayal differently than Marcus, more internally, more privately. She doesn't talk about Victor often, and when she does, her tone is matter-of-fact, almost clinical. He made choices, she says, bad choices, and now he's living with the consequences. It's the same formulation she offered years ago, but it has deepened as she's grown. She's begun to understand the complexity beneath the simple words, the pain, the betrayal, the damage that ripples outward from selfish actions. "Do you miss him?" I asked her once. She thought about it carefully before answering. "I miss who I thought he was. The dad who came to my soccer games and helped with my homework and made pancakes on Saturday mornings. But that person wasn't real. He was a character Dad was playing." "You don't think any of it was genuine?" "Maybe some of it, I don't know," she shrugged. "But the thing is, I can't separate what was real from what was fake. It's all mixed together, so I've decided to just let it go, all of it, the good memories and the bad ones." That sounds very mature. "It's not mature, it's survival." She looked at me with eyes that were too old for her years. "If I hold on to those memories, either the good ones or the bad ones, they'll control me. I don't want to be controlled by someone who isn't even here." I pulled her into a hug, marveling at the wisdom that pain had forced her to develop. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from watching you. My career has stabilized into something sustainable. I'm not a high-powered executive anymore. That ship sailed years ago, and I'm not sure I'd want to board it even if I could. But I've built a marketing consultancy that pays the bills and challenges my mind and allows me to be present for my children. I work from home mostly, with occasional client meetings and the odd business trip. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Built from nothing, dependent on no one, proof that I can take care of myself and my family without anyone else's help. The financial settlement from the divorce helped, of course. The $3 million, reduced by legal fees and restitution obligations, was enough to pay off the mortgage, fund the kids' college savings, and provide a cushion against uncertainty. But I've been careful not to rely on that money. It came from Victor, from the life he destroyed, and there's something tainted about it that I can't quite shake. So I live on what I earn, touching the settlement only for the children's needs. It feels cleaner that way, more honest. I've started dadding again. This was the hardest part of moving on, harder than the career, harder than the therapy, harder than any other aspect of rebuilding my life. The idea of trusting another person, of opening myself to potential betrayal, of being vulnerable with someone who might turn out to be as false as Victor, it terrified me. But loneliness is its own kind of prison, and I didn't survive Victor's betrayal just to lock myself away for the rest of my life. His name is Daniel. He's a widower with 2 grown children, a retired professor who writes books about environmental history and takes long walks on weekend mornings. He's nothing like Victor, quiet where Victor was loud, thoughtful where Victor was impulsive, genuine where Victor was performative. We met at a book club I joined during my rebuilding phase. He was reading something I had recommended, and we struck up a conversation that lasted 3 hours. He asked for my number. I hesitated for a week before calling him. "You're nervous," he said on our first official date. "That's okay, I'm nervous too." "It's not just nerves, it's damage from my marriage. I'm not sure I know how to do this anymore." "Neither do I. I lost my wife to cancer 4 years ago. I thought I would never want to be with anyone else." He smiled gently. "But here I am, taking a chance, hoping it's worth the risk." "Is it worth the risk?" "I don't know yet, but I know that life is too short to spend it being afraid, too short to let the past dictate the future." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the kind of person who could take risks, embrace uncertainty, open her heart to possibility. But I wasn't there yet, not completely. "I need to go slowly," I told him. "Very slowly. And I need you to understand that I might never be able to fully trust again. That part of me might be permanently broken. That's okay. Slow is fine. And broken things can still be beautiful. We've been dating for 8 months now. Slow, careful, cautious. He's patient with my walls, my suspicions, my need to verify everything he tells me. He doesn't push for more than I can give. He shows up consistently, reliably, without drama or manipulation. It's not love yet. I'm not sure I'm capable of love, not the way I used to understand it. But it's something, a beginning, a possibility. And after everything I've been through, possibility feels like a miracle. Victor was released from prison 6 months ago. I learned about it through the victim notification system, an automated email that arrived in my inbox like a small bomb. He had served 5 years of his 8-year sentence, earning early release through good behavior and participation in rehabilitation programs. Good behavior. As if the same man who had deceived 2 families for years, who had defrauded dozens of clients, who had stolen my wedding ring and pawned it for cash, was capable of genuine reform. I didn't respond to the notification. I didn't contact Victor. I simply made sure my security systems were updated, reminded the children's schools of the custody restrictions, and continued living my life. He's tried to reach out. Letters, mostly, handwritten missives that arrive at my post office box, since I long ago ensured he doesn't have my physical address. I don't read them. I throw them away unopened. I don't know what he wants. Forgiveness, probably. Absolution. Some confirmation that I've moved past my anger and am ready to acknowledge his humanity again. He won't get it from me. Not because I'm consumed by hatred. I'm not. The rage that burned through me in those first years has cooled into something more like indifference. I don't wish him ill. I don't fantasize about his suffering. I simply don't think about him at all, most of the time. He's irrelevant now. A chapter that ended. A person who no longer has any claim on my attention or energy. That, more than anything else, feels like victory. Marcus visited his father last month. He didn't tell me beforehand. He's 16, old enough to make some decisions independently, and he knew I wouldn't try to stop him. He simply went, spent an hour in a coffee shop with the man who had shattered our family, and came home quiet and thoughtful. "How was it?" I asked, when he seemed ready to talk. "Weird. He looks different, older, smaller somehow." "Prison will do that." He said he was sorry for everything. He said he thinks about us every day, wishes he could go back and make different choices. Do you believe him? Marcus considered the question. I believe he's sorry he got caught. I believe he regrets losing his comfortable life. But genuine remorse for the harm he caused, I'm not sure he's capable of that. That's very perceptive. I've had a lot of time to think about it. He paused. He asked about you, whether you're happy, whether you've moved on. What did you tell him? I told him that wasn't his business anymore, that he gave up the right to know about your life when he betrayed you. I felt a surge of pride and sadness. My son shouldn't have to protect me from his own father. He shouldn't have to navigate these impossible emotional waters. You didn't have to say that. I know, but it's true. He met my eyes. You're happier now than you were when he was here. I can see it. And I don't want him thinking he has any right to that happiness. Marcus. I'm not going to visit him again. I got what I needed. I saw him. I heard his apologies. I confirmed what I already knew. He's not the person I thought he was. He never was. And I don't need him in my life. He said it with a finality that broke my heart, even as it filled me with respect. My son had made his peace. Not through forgiveness, not through reconciliation, but through acceptance of a painful truth. His father wasn't worth his energy, and Marcus had better things to do with his life. I still have the ring. My original wedding ring, the one I found in that pawn shop, the one Victor stole and sold for $300. I keep it in a small box in my dresser, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. A reminder of what I survived. A reminder of how far I've come. A reminder that the lowest moments of our lives can become the foundations for something better. I don't wear it, of course. I don't wear any wedding ring now, Daniel and I aren't there yet, and I'm not sure I ever want to be married again. The institution has lost its meaning for me, corrupted by years of lies dressed up as commitment. But I keep the ring because it represents something important. It represents the moment I discovered the truth. The moment I stopped being a victim and started being a warrior. The moment I decided that I would not let Victor's betrayal define the rest of my life. Finding that ring in a pawn shop was the worst moment of my life, and also, in a strange way, the best, because it set me free. If you're listening to this story, I want to leave you with something. Not advice exactly. Every situation is different, every betrayal unique, every path to healing particular to the person walking it. But some things I've learned that might help. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The signs were there in my marriage for years: the distance, the secrecy, the feeling that I was being managed rather than loved. I ignored them because I wanted to believe in the life I had built. Don't make that mistake. Listen to the voice inside you that knows when something isn't right. Second, you are stronger than you think. I didn't believe I could survive Victor's betrayal. I didn't think I had the strength to fight back, to rebuild, to become someone new. But I did. And you can too. The strength is there, dormant, maybe, buried under years of being told you're not enough. But it's there, waiting for you to claim it. Third, revenge is satisfying, but it's not healing. I took Victor for everything he had. I helped send him to prison. I destroyed his reputation, his career, his comfortable life. And it felt good for a while. But revenge didn't heal the wounds he had inflicted. That required different work. Therapy. Self-reflection. The slow, painful process of rebuilding a sense of self that wasn't defined by what had been done to me. Fourth, you can love again. Maybe not the same way. Maybe not with the same openness or trust. But the capacity for connection isn't destroyed by betrayal. It's just buried under fear. Daniel has shown me that. Our relationship is different from what I had with Victor, more cautious, more honest, more grounded in reality. But it's real. And real is better than the fantasy I was living before. Finally, your story doesn't end with betrayal. It continues. It evolves. The worst thing that ever happened to you is not the last thing that will ever happen to you. There is life after devastation. There is hope after despair. There is a future waiting for you, even when the present feels impossible. I found my wedding ring at a pawn shop, while my husband was still wearing his. That's how this story began. A moment of discovery that shattered everything I believed about my life, my marriage, my sense of who I was. But that's not how the story ends. The story ends here, with me sitting in my living room, my children upstairs doing homework, my life rebuilt from the wreckage of Victor's lies. The story ends with me at peace. Not happy exactly, happiness still feels like too ambitious a goal, but peaceful, content, grateful for what I have rather than grieving what I lost. The story ends with me knowing, finally, that I am enough, that I was always enough, that Victor's betrayal was about his emptiness, not my inadequacy. The story ends with me wearing no ring at all, my finger bare, my heart healing, my future open to possibilities I couldn't have imagined 3 years ago. So I ask you now, as I close this chapter of my story, what are you ignoring that deserves your attention? What signs are you dismissing because the truth is too painful to face? What strength have you forgotten you possess? Listen to yourself, trust yourself, and know that whatever you're facing, whatever betrayal, whatever devastation, whatever impossible situation, you can survive it. You can more than survive it. You can transform it. You can take the worst thing that ever happened to you and turn it into the foundation for something better. I know because I did it. And if I can, you can too. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're in the midst of betrayal, in the wreckage of a life you thought you knew, please remember, this is not the end. This is the beginning of who you're becoming. Take care of yourselves and each other. With love, Renee.